Ian, welcome to the Sipping Point.
Thank you, Lori.
I'm so excited today to hear all about your journey from wine to non alcoholic bitters, All the Bitter being your company. And so tell me a little bit about your background. Of course, I have lots of wine lovers listening, and I know they'll be so impressed by your background at the French Laundry. And how did you go from there to owning your own bitters company? Tell us the whole deal.
I don't even know. I did not think that I would be going from selling, DRC and Screaming Eagle to making non-alcoholic cocktail bitters in Chico, California, but here we are. So start, kind of at the beginning. My wife and I met at the French Laundry working as somms about 6 or 7 years ago and had an incredible time. Absolutely, was one of the best times of my entire life. We had kids and we quit drinking. We drank too much and we needed to make a change. And when we had kids, we realized that. So we made that switch and we quit drinking at the right time because the non-alcoholic beverage market really kind of emerged about 5 years ago. We had O'Doul's, and at the time there was Seedlip. That was about the only thing that existed. We actually had a handful of bottles at the French Laundry, but none of us knew how to use it. None of us really cared enough, honestly. I know that sounds bad, but none of us really cared enough to figure out how to use it. And then once I quit drinking, I realized I understand why these products exist and why it's important that we learn how to make sophisticated adult beverages for people that don't want alcohol for whatever reason, whether it's, you're not drinking for 9 months, you're not drinking tonight, you're not drinking because it's January, you're not drinking because you've got, a big test tomorrow morning or you're training for a marathon. There's a million reasons why somebody might not want alcohol, but still wants an enjoyable beverage. And so, the good news for us is we quit drinking, and this, you're sitting behind us is a huge assortment. This is a bottle shop and tasting room that we've opened recently. And we stock over 200 different non-alcoholic beer, wine, spirits, and cocktails. And that's a small selection. That's a very curated selection of what's on the market now. And so we got really into making non-alcoholic cocktails just as people, as consumers who enjoy a tasty beverage but don't want alcohol anymore. And realized pretty quickly that there were a ton of options for spirits on the market, but there were virtually no non-alcoholic cocktail bitters, which is a super important ingredient to finish your drinks. I realized that you could make an old fashioned or a Manhattan, but you couldn't really finish those drinks because there were no, non-alcoholic versions of Angostura.
Mm-hmm.
So we plugged away and worked at creating recipes in our home kitchen and went from there to scaling up into a shared commercial kitchen. And now we have a production space at a bottle shop and tasting room.
Yep. And I know we'll talk later about how people can connect, but they can order from you online, but you're also available on online stores and you have restaurants and bars using your products as well.
Yes. Yeah. We're available now in 600 bars, restaurants, and retailers nationwide and 10 countries. If you go to our website, allthebitter.com, there's a store locator, so you can look at your area and find either a store that carries us near you or find a restaurant that carries us. And chances are, if a restaurant is stocking non-alcoholic cocktail bitters, that's a pretty good indication that they have a strong non-alcoholic program.
I think bitters are probably like, that last ingredient, like a finishing oil or that finishing touch on a dish that a chef would make, that a lot of us don't think about that as part of our cocktail, but it's always an important part. And so how great of you to realize that that was missing in the market and, to fill that void and be the first, it sounds like, in doing that. You have a number of flavors, which I have here behind me. And, one of the things you offer is sort of your basic flavors. It's a 3-pack. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about those 3 flavors and how they may relate to other bitters that people have experienced as well. I actually made myself a cocktail of Pellegrino and the aromatic bitters. So maybe we can start there.
Yeah, aromatic is our version of Angostura, essentially. So any bitter that's labeled aromatic, it's a pretty kind of standard flavor profile of warm spices. It's rich, earthy, and bitter. And so in ours, we use cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, ginger, black pepper, allspice, and star anise. Literally every baking spice. It's very bright. It's kind of Christmassy almost, but really balanced by a very bitter, earthy backbone. It's the standard bitter. It's what you would use if a cocktail calls for bitters, an old fashioned, a Manhattan, any drink that is asking for bitters but doesn't specify a flavor. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for aromatic bitters.
Great. And there are a number of ways of enjoying this. I'm using just sparkling water, which is awesome. You can do during the day. But you can full on make mocktails and cocktails because, even if you're making a cocktail with alcohol, these just have such great flavors, but not just the flavors that are in there. What I was really intrigued by is that you have functional ingredients, meaning ingredients that are good for us that you can feel good about. Tell me about the functional ingredients that you have in your bitters.
Yeah, cocktail bitters have a historical context that's rooted in health, in digestion specifically. So before bitters were used in cocktails, they were a medicinal tonic. They were taken daily for a variety of ailments. And like a lot of snake oil, they didn't do the million things they said they did. But what they are good for genuinely is digestive health. And so we've really focused on a pretty broad range of ingredients in our bitters that are you're more likely to find them in digestive bitters. We're using dandelion root, burdock root, ginger, fennel, milk thistle seed, gentian root, all of these different ingredients that not only lend a really wonderful, really true herbal flavor to our bitters, but they also are ingredients that are really noted for their use in digestive health and gut health.
So the other two in the starter pack are the New Orleans and the orange. The orange sounds pretty self-explanatory, but tell me about New Orleans style bitters because I was not familiar with that.
Yeah, New Orleans style refers to Peychaud's bitters, which is, Peychaud's, Angostura, and orange are kind of the holy trinity of cocktail bitters. It's what you're going to find behind every bar. Plenty of places will stock maybe a walnut bitter, cardamom, or lavender, but almost every bar is going to carry those three bitters. Those are the classic bitters that you're going to find in every cocktail. And Peychaud's is specifically used in a Sazerac, which is a really specific drink, but it's such an important cocktail that you find it behind every bar. It's a really wonderful flavor, though, on its own. It doesn't need to be used just in a Sazerac cocktail. The defining characteristic is anise. Is a very anise-forward flavor. Peychaud's is also confusingly kind of in that category of aromatic bitters, which means that it's spice, and it has a similar profile. But Peychaud's goes a very different direction in being anise-forward, and it's a little bit lighter and kind of fruitier than Angostura, where Angostura is really bold, rich, and spicy. Peychaud's is much lighter and brighter, and almost a little fruity. So in ours, we use tart cherry, anise, hibiscus, and rose hips, plus 15 other spices and ingredients, but those are the primary flavors.
I love that. And you mentioned the website, but I definitely will link that on my blog and with the podcast, because what I loved about the website is you have so many recipes out there for great cocktails, and each recipe you can make it with alcohol or without alcohol. You give us the option to do that because, like you said, some people might not drink at all, but some people just might not be drinking this week or tonight. And so it's nice to see that. So if someone comes into your tasting room, what is the experience like? I know you said you have over 200 non-alcoholic alcohol and wine and spirits. What can they expect if they come visit you in Chico, California?
Yeah, so we're transitioning into a full seated lounge. So right now we're kind of doing standing tastings. And after I left the French Laundry, I went to Opus One and managed the hospitality program there. So it's been very fun to kind of take all of that and translate that into a non-alcoholic tasting room. So we have a handful of cocktail kits that we offer. Right now we have a margarita, an old fashioned, a Negroni, and a lemon drop made using a cava spirit, which is really interesting. So kind of trying to focus on recipes and drinks and profiles that people know, but substituting out non-alcoholic spirits to make the drink work without alcohol. But to your point, most of these recipes can be made with an alcoholic spirit instead. So the margarita is a great example. It's a great margarita recipe. You can make it with alcoholic tequila. You can make it with NA tequila. You can make it with half and half, which is a great option for people that you're still drinking. You just don't want to drink as much. Let's say you want to have a couple of cocktails in the afternoon, but you don't, want to be asleep by 3:00. Make a couple of half strength drinks. Enjoy the full flavor of that margarita, enjoy the full drink. Don't drink less, just drink differently.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a ton of stuff that we have, of course, for people to taste. We pour our bitters with soda water, which is the easiest way to drink bitters, like you mentioned with Pellegrino. Our New Orleans bitters with a tart cherry is my favorite, with a squeeze of lime. So just like plain sparkling water, New Orleans bitters and a squeeze of lime is really, really excellent, like surprisingly good. And bitters and soda is really just like flavored seltzer, but better. It's your LaCroix or your Waterloo, but much more interesting. It's the cocktail version of flavored seltzer. And to your point, it's good for you. It's made using whole organic ingredients. We're not using any, artificial flavors or colors or extracts. We're just using whole plants, and whole plants that have, a historical context of digestive benefits. Replace that seltzer with bitters and soda. It's a wonderful, refreshing option just to drink throughout the day. But we will have, in the next month or so, we'll have a full cocktail menu. We'll have 12 non-alcoholic cocktails plus beer and wine by the glass flights. We're going to do wine flights, bitters and soda flights, and cocktail flights. And we'll have a little menu of kind of local snacks like olives and cheese.
Nice. I know this is a random, that this popped in my head, so forgive me. Are you a Bravo TV watcher at all?
I'm not, no.
Okay, there's a show called The Summer House, and it's like a summer share house in the Hamptons, bunch of kids. They're a little bit older now. But anyway, Carl, one of the roommates, is no longer drinks, and he's trying to open up a non-alcoholic bar in New York City called Soft Bar.
Yes.
Which you may have heard of that. So that's big in the news now. So I guess, we're going to see these popping up all over the place. It sounds like you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game for sure. I'm obsessed with
I have a call
tonic.
with them tomorrow, actually.
Do you? Love that. Okay. Exciting. You're going to have to keep me up to date on that. I'm obsessed with tonic, but sometimes I want it, but I don't want to drink. And so I loved doing this with one of your special bitters, which is the lavender, which I also absolutely love. So tell us a little bit about this one. I know it has some great benefits beyond just digestion, but it really just, this is a light Q tonic, nothing too fancy, with 5 dashes of this. It's so delicious. And I feel like I'm having something without, having to mix up a whole bunch of ingredients.
Yeah, it's so good. Lavender is one of my favorites. It's unfortunately sold out right now, but it's a wonderful flavor. We use local lavender from a farm that's about 30 minutes down the road. There's chamomile in there as well, and that's one of the things that I think separates our lavender bitters from other, not only lavender bitters, but other lavender flavors and drinks and foods. When you do tastings, one of the things that people will say to us is, "No, I don't like lavender in my food," and I try not to be pushy about it, but people will usually eventually take a taste and are always pleasantly surprised by it. They are not over the top, floral, soapy, perfumey lavender. They're really, really well balanced, I think. So chamomile rounds it out a little bit. Chamomile softens the really sharp, perfumey lavender flavor. And then we've got a handful of ingredients in there that help to, again, kind of diffuse that overly floral lavender flavor. And that's where you're getting some of those kind of, calming benefits from. So we use passion flower, which you'll find in, like nighttime teas. It's relaxing. It'll help you with sleep. It's not going to put you to sleep, but it's absolutely helpful for relaxation and for sleep. And skullcap and ashwagandha and blue vervain, all of these really wonderful herbs that are really lovely, both for their calming benefits, but also because they just taste really great, and they give our lavender bitters a more complex, more interesting taste.
I agree, because I think I would have been one of those people that was like, I don't know if I want. I love the smell of lavender, but the thought of it in a drink would just be like, I'm not sure about that. But the first time I tried it, I fell in love with it. And I'm a person that doesn't really like sweet things, or maybe you're a person that's trying to avoid sugar, which you tend to get in a lot of cocktails, NA or otherwise. This, if you get it, sugar-free tonic or light or the soda water, just is so nice because you're not getting that added sugar in your diet. So that's my absolute favorite. Not that I don't like the others, but definitely into that one. And the other special flavor is the cherry coffee. And when we had talked once before, you had a great idea for this one that had to do with cola. So tell me a little bit about this one and your favorite way to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a fun one. We use decaf coffee. It comes from Equator Coffees in Marin, which Carly and I first ran into at the French Laundry. That's the coffee that they serve there. And so that was a pretty obvious choice for us. And they're, a couple hours away. So last time I ordered, they they roasted and shipped on a Monday. We received it on Tuesday and we ground it and started extraction on Tuesday. So within 24 hours, the coffee was roasted, ground, and started extraction. The flavor is incredibly fresh. It's really, really wonderful. We pair that with sweet cherry, orange peel, vanilla, chocolate, roasted chicory, roasted dandelion, cinnamon, and cardamom. It sounds like a lot, but it's a really interesting, very rich, kind of warm, but also like spiced and bright coffee flavor. It works exceptionally well in tonic. So to your point, and all of any cocktail bitters, really, ours and other bitters as well, they can be easily mixed with soda water, of course, but they can also be added to ginger beer, ginger ale, tonic, like any simple mixer. Bitters are liquid seasoning. It's like salt and pepper. You can add them to virtually any drink. You can add them to most foods. You can add them to ice cream. Bitters are often thought about as kind of esoteric and almost difficult to use, but they're not. It's literally like salt and pepper. You can add it to anything that you're drinking. And so simple, drinks like a tonic and a couple dashes of bitters is really, really excellent. It's a really nice way to elevate. Tonic is great on its own. Tonic is a wonderful replacement, to your point, for somebody that's not drinking. Tonic is complex. It's delicious. You can find light tonic. It's got enough bite and flavor to enjoy it by itself. Couple dashes of bitters make it even better. So coffee and tonic works in the same way that a coffee shops would serve espresso and tonic. Those flavors work wonderfully together. You can also add it to Coke, to your point. I've been adding it to Diet Coke, regular Coke, Dr. Pepper. It's a really nice way to boost regular sodas. We'll add our New Orleans bitter, which is tart cherry, to Coke to make kind of like a more interesting version of, cherry Coke. But again, without adding extra sugar, without adding all those, chemicals, like you're adding real ingredients, you're adding a really nice, a more subtle flavor. You're not adding an ounce of cherry syrup, you're adding half a teaspoon of cherry bitters. But you get a really wonderful flavor without all that added sugar and digestive benefits.
One of the things I loved seeing on your website was that when you purchase anything from All the Bitter, 1% of your profits is going to be donated to causes for the planet. I think you call it 1% for the planet. So tell me a little bit about that. How does that work? I just love that you have that philanthropic angle as well.
Yeah, I mean, we started this business because of our kids, honestly. As much as we loved working in restaurants, I miss working in restaurants. The hours were too late. It didn't work out, for us, for having a small new family. We could make much more money working somewhere else, working for somebody else. But owning our own business and doing it this way allows us to operate the way that we want to operate. We can make the product the way that we want to make it. We can use the ingredients we want to use. We can source the way we want to source. And we can give back the way we want to give back. And again, we have a 6 and a 4-year-old, and I want to make sure that, the world is still healthy when they're older and things are not looking great. So it's really important for us to donate, some of the profits that we make to environmental charities. And so for the last couple of years, we've donated to an organization called Trees for the Planet that plants trees in Africa. They create what are called food forests, and they essentially work with small family farms and plant a ton of trees, a forest essentially around their property, which obviously then helps tremendously with, carbon dioxide and oxygen and carbon in the atmosphere. But it also teaches these farmers how to farm more sustainably. It provides them food because a lot of the trees are functional fruiting trees. So really, really wonderful organization. And then in the last year, we started donating more locally to California charities, an organization called River Partners that helps with rivers and marshlands and waterways in California, an environmental charity that's based here in Chico that helps with local cleanups, and then another charity in the Sierra foothills that's doing trail cleanups.
If you want to check out allthebitter.com, not only will you have the chance to order any of these delicious bitters, I am a total convert now. I never thought too much about bitters. Maybe I had one or two things behind the bar, but didn't think a lot about it. But now I'm fully on board. So you've converted me. And the recipes, I think, are amazing as well. When can folks expect to come in with the full tasting and cocktail menu that you mentioned earlier?
We're aiming for the middle to late June. So
Okay.
about a month from now, we should be fully up and running. But we are open now. The bottle shop is open. We're doing tastings. We're doing sales. But we'll have our full seated menu by the end of June.
Perfect. And you can come in, taste a delicious non-alcohol wine or cocktail, and then bring home the ingredients to do it yourself. Ian, this has been so amazing. Thank you so much for coming on The Sipping Point. I really enjoyed it.
Lori, thank you for your time. This was great.